Live. Hello, Misscliks land.
Hello, and welcome to Studying the Storm.
Start with a little dance there.
Yeah.
As you can see, we have a guest today.
Hi.
The esteemed... just kidding. Hold on. I had to mute the stream. Sorry. Where are the esteemed Kevin Knocke? Yay! Kevin, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Hi, I'm Kevin Knocke. I do things. Mostly I am, I used to be a video producer for Blizzard. Recently, I've been pursuing a lot of things on the talent side, so you'll see me at a bunch of esports events. I've been casting some Heroes, the Heroes Premier League. I play a bunch of Hearthstone. That's pretty much my life. I don't think I do any other activities. So, yeah.
Yeah, your stream has been up and running very much lately, right?
Yes, I've been streaming a lot. I was very lucky. I hit Legend in Hearthstone last season, so I have renewed my interest in the game, and I play about, 3 to 5 hours a day of Hearthstone on stream every morning or something like that, then usually back it up with a bunch of heroes.
I don't know if luck had anything to do with it, because I was with you at, what was that, PAX? And every time we weren't doing something, I saw you over there with your iPad playing Hearthstone every second.
I don't know what you're talking about. I only played 250 games at PAX. Come on.
Hey Anna, apparently your mic is crazy
I just saw that. Yeah, I'm taking it down.
Sorry.
That happens, I think that's happened to me a couple times because of Heroes. When I turn Heroes on, it actually... But I will fix it. No worries. Anyway, in the meantime, Gillyweed.
Yes. Hello, I am Gillyweed, or GillyweedSC2 on Twitter and all the things, and I make StarCraft and Heroes of the Storm content, streaming Heroes of the Storm 5 days a week most of the time. And that's about it for me, I think. Oh, I make board game content as well.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't know you make board
it's
game
awesome.
content. I should watch said content.
I love board games so much.
And I am Anna Prosser. I work full-time for Good Game Agency, which is the company that owns Evil Geniuses and Alliance, the pro gaming teams, and I do their video production. And I also do all sorts of things with Misscliks and freelance video games, journalism, coverage, work, streaming videos, all that kind of stuff. Just like these guys. These cool guys on either side of me. And this show, as you may know, is Studying the Storm. If you're just tuning in for the first time, this show was born of the desire that JC and I had to learn how to cast this game. We both really enjoy playing it, and we've both had this desire coming from StarCraft to be able to cast a game at some point. So we really set out to just have a little study hall session each week with each other, and then we realized, you know what, a lot of people don't have keys to this game, and they want to hear some of the things that we're studying, so why don't we share that with the community? And Studying the Storm was born. So we have all sorts of things planned for you today. JC, what do we have planned?
Well, first of all, do you want to explain this wonderful channel that we are a part of?
Oh yeah, I certainly do. I mentioned I do all sorts of things for Misscliks. We are a community website and stream network, if you will, that has the sole goal of uplifting and supporting and providing exposure for female role models in geek and gaming culture. And the reason for that is not because we don't want to support all role models in geek and gaming culture, but just because as women in this scene, we've watched so many of our female peers come and go based on the fact that they just don't feel like they have the support they need or the role models they need to kind of say, I can do this, I can stay, I belong here. So we're just trying to increase the number of role models and provide support for them where we can. And ultimately, we have the goal of just making ourselves completely irrelevant because all we really want is a positive, safe space for geeks and gamers on the internet in general. So that's what we're here doing, and that's why you'll see 2 female hosts here, and you'll see guests of all types alongside us.
Yes. I really love that. I really love Misscliks.
Good.
As far as today goes, we will be doing... we'll start off by going over some talent building, making builds, figuring out what talents to choose when you are playing the game. And Kevin is here to explain more of that to us. We'll then also go through a character spotlight. This week we're spotlighting Lily. It's panda time.
Panda.
So Lily's gotten a lot of, not hate, but you know, some sadness. So we're here to bolster her up a little bit, talk about how you can make her a little bit better. And then, of course, we will have our quiz after that. As always, please tweet us questions that you would like to ask us for the quiz. It can be anything that we've studied today or that we've studied on past episodes. And to ask us a question, all you have to do is tweet with the hashtag STS show. And you can also tweet at Anna Prosser or at GillyWoodSC2 at Misscliks as well. And then after that, we'll have a little bit different of a play session, but we'll leave that as a little bit of a surprise to you until we get there, and a community spotlight. And that will be our show.
And if you notice on Twitter, we actually do have a fun little announcement at the end of this show. So if you have to leave early, be sure to watch Twitter for it. And if you don't, be sure to stay till the very end because we have a fun little announcement to share with you guys at the very, very, very end of the show. So let's get right into it. Kevin, as he mentioned, worked very closely with Blizzard inside the halls, the sacred hallowed halls of Blizzard during the development of Heroes of the Storm. So he's uniquely equipped to teach us about some of this stuff. And we asked him to come in and start teaching us about talents. The idea being we want to know some of the prominent talents that are being used right now, some of the pro builds, but even further back from that, kind of saying, okay, if I'm looking at a hero, I've played them a few times, I understand at least my basic abilities, how do I begin to strategically build my talents so that I can use my character the best way possible? So, Kevin, where do you think I need to start if I'm doing something like that?
Well, so the biggest thing to start is to take a step back and maybe talk a little bit about the talent system itself. So obviously the talent system is something very different than what you get from other MOBA games, right? So usually in a MOBA game, you have your very classic item shop or just some way that you have a currency that you spend for items that allows you to improve your character. So talents replaces that system in Heroes of the Storm. Talents is something that is earned just purely on an experience basis. Once you hit key levels, you will get a range of talents that you can use to customize your character. Now, the cool thing about this is that it doesn't matter if you're back at your base or out on the map. You can select your talents at any given point in time to react to what your opponents are doing, correct? So the biggest thing about talents is that nothing is set in stone. Even at the very top level of pro players right now, there is no established meta that says here's when you take this talent, here's when you take this talent, etc. Use them to react to what your opponents are doing, and you will have the best success with them.
Very cool.
Yeah. So how would you suggest then using them? Maybe we should go through the general talents that a lot of heroes have, something like that, to determine then knowing when to react and how you can react to what you're seeing.
Totally.
I was going to ask too, because maybe I'll just make this statement and you can correct me and teach me about whether my mindset is correct. So when I go into these games and I'm playing a new hero, let's say, sometimes I've played around with a hero enough that I've tried a few, trial and error, and I know which talents to build. But if I'm trying a new hero and I want to give myself, I'll go to heroesfire.com, which we promote every time because we just think it's so wonderful. And I'll
they're amazing, though.
Yeah, I know, they're wonderful. It's been so helpful for the show. But I'll say, okay, I'm going to look at this character, I'm going to look at their abilities, I'm going to try to identify what are the few, usually 3-ish major strengths of this character, and then I'm going to decide which of those strengths I want to capitalize on, and then I'm going to look for talents that capitalize on those strengths. So for example, Kerrigan is one I'm really familiar with. I would go in and I would say, okay, I see that Kerrigan has these shields that are spawned from her damage. So I'm going to look for all the abilities that buff her damage and shields because I want to make her tankier because I hate dying because I always dive. So that would be my way of going in and building a talent. So would you say that in terms of the really high level macro view in terms of teaching someone how to begin building talents, would you say that that's a good approach, or how would you say to do it?
I actually think that's a very good approach. So speaking from, when I was at my time at Blizzard and everything like that, the designers loved having aha moments in the talents. When people would find synergies that they're like, wait a second, if I take that talent, it buffs this ability, but then this one buffs this one too. And that makes the talent that I took before stronger. Oh, aha. That's what they want. And that's a lot of the design philosophy that went to the game too. So that is definitely there. And I think that's a very good thing. And I do think that's a good way to analyze talents. So as you're going down the list, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, let's take Vala, for example. I play Vala a whole lot, right?
Okay.
So at the beginning, you're thinking, well, what's going to do well for Valo? Obviously, I'm a ranged assassin, so I'm probably going to want to put out damage, right? So you can do a couple of things there. The level 1 talent that I choose, of course, is Rancor. I like my attack speed whenever I get my stacks of hatred. I think it makes her the most useful. So as I'm building now Rancor and attack speed, now I have to have in the back of my mind, wait a second. So now I'm attacking faster than any of the other players are. So maybe a talent like, I wouldn't suggest you take Manticore at 7. I'll get to that later. But Manticore, for example, now once I do more auto attacks against the same target, every third auto attack, it does 50% more damage. But now that I'm auto-attacking more, it's an indirect buff to the first talent that I took as well in Rancor, right? Mm-hmm. So those synergies together and what you were proposing before, it's exactly what you want to do when you start researching talents. And Heroes Fire is a great place to go. Just go look at all of the talents, start to locate those synergies, and you can get a decent build from that without having to do any other research.
Mm-hmm. And you can see here along the left side, we can look at what her abilities are, so that's a good reference too. And in case, you know, just to keep giving you guys resources, if you just got your access to Heroes of the Storm and you're starting to be like, I don't know where to find information, heroesfire.com is great. You can also go to the official Blizzard website and you can see that you have all the heroes here, so you can click on them, like let's say Brightwing, and I can look what are Brightwing's abilities, what is her damage like, her utility like, all that stuff. So you can kind of learn the basics of a hero and look at them in a really beautiful setting here on the Blizzard website, and then, you know, go a little bit more in depth over here on Heroes Fire.
Awesome. So I would probably say then that once you've kind of understood that you're looking for synergies when you're building out your talents, the next most important thing to understand is probably what your role is in the team comp that you're playing. So as we all know, of course, when you're running in solo queue, there's just as good of a chance that you're going to get Murky Abathur, Sergeant Hammer, and someone else ridiculous as you are a normal solid team comp. So if I'm playing Vol again, to go back to that example, and I know I'm in a good solid team comp that's everyone's pretty well balanced, all I have to worry about is dishing out damage, well, that's all I'm going to do is dish out damage. Let's say my team has a lot of natural CC and stuns. That's great. I know that they're going to be able to peel for me. They're going to get guys away from me so that I can just stand at the back and do auto attack damage. But now let's assume in a world where I had now 4 assassins on my team, and the only other guy is a warrior, and now we don't have any healing. We don't have any sustain. We don't have a lot of pushing power because we don't have those specialists that get out there and start pushing down lanes. Well, maybe Vala needs Caltrops in that case because she's going to need a better escape. And Caltrops actually adds a couple of traps behind her tumble that slows enemies that hit it. So there you may find that, no, I don't want to take my searing attacks to give myself more damage. I want to go for Caltrops because I know that my team is not built to provide an escape for me. So just something to think about there as well.
Okay, cool. So really looking at, you know, how, and that kind of goes back to what we studied last week, guys, too, is what is the role of the particular hero I'm playing on my team. We talked about, you know, the bruisers versus the ranged assassins versus the supports. So thinking about, I remember that Idra was saying how sometimes you can play, was it Tassadar he was saying that he would play as more of an assassin? Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
He didn't even consider him a support.
Yeah.
It just was like, he's an assassin.
Yeah.
Itra's right. He absolutely is. Oh, so that's actually one of the more interesting ones that I want to talk about. And this should give a good indication of kind of what happens to the meta, or lack thereof, I should say, in Heroes of the Storm right now. So Idra's right. Tassadar right now is purely played as an assassin, because if you can activate his Archon heroic ability, which gives him more attack speed and just generally more power, and you can position him well in fights, he dishes out more damage than basically anyone else can in the game over that short period of time. However, about 3 months ago, if you would have told anyone that you were playing Archon, they would have shamed you and never played Heroes with you again. They would have said, no, Force Wall locks down lanes. Why would you take anything but Force Wall? So the meta really is changing very quickly, and it shows you the versatility that certain heroes have. Tassadar, though, Idra's right, totally a damage dealer right now.
Have you seen, like, how much variation are you seeing in the pro scene as far as other heroes being able to sort of blur the lines between the different classes?
Well, so I think a lot of that is based on team comp as well. So, like, let's take an example, a normal team comp in a pro scene. You're probably going to have Arthas just because he's the strongest hero probably in the game right now overall. You're going to have a solid healer. You're probably going to have 2 damage dealers. You'll probably have someone that can either split push or roam, right? But let's say that swing person, like let's say you have an Arthas, and that swing person is Stitches. Well, now you have 2 big tanky guys in your fight. So as Arthas, maybe you don't have to worry about Army of the Dead as much, right? So instead of needing to be the big sustain guy, maybe you can take Syndragosa because you know your team has enough sustain in fights. You just need to lock down big turrets and make sure that your team can engage behind enemy lines.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you see it very often then? You see people or see heroes in sort of different roles that you wouldn't see them normally?
Yeah, totally. So I mean, like, I think Tassadar was a pretty good example there. Let's see. Let's take another one like Sonya is a very good example. Up until this most recent patch, and we'll have to see how she shakes out with a couple of the changes, Sonya was used more as a hybrid CC/damage dealer than she was as a pure tanky person, right? Even though she is a warrior, she's someone who wants to leap in with her heroic ability, immediately start whirlwinding around and hitting people with her abilities, and do massive amounts of damage. Yes, she is under that that warrior role, but she totally plays an atypical warrior. She just wants to get in there and start damaging people.
So actually, this is a good segue because as I'm looking at Sonya's talents, one of the first level talents is block. And I know that block is one that's available as a first level talent for lots of different heroes. And I was wondering if we could maybe chat about a few of those abilities or a few of those talents that we see across lots of heroes, especially at the very beginning, that people are going to be exposed to. You know that feeling at the beginning of the game where you're like, I don't know any of these talents. Which one should I pick? You know, let's give some education on those so people don't have to sit there and read and then get ganked. You know, and then I guess also as a sub point to that, talking about whether those pan hero talents are generally going to be the most applicable, or whether you see that those talents that are more across lots of heroes are generally the ones that people are staying away from.
Yeah, this is definitely not an easy answer again, right? So like, so most of the time with the recommended level 1 neutral talents, you'll want to take them. But again, it all depends on kind of the hero composition of the team that you're facing. Like, let's say Conjurer's Pursuit, for example. It's one of those level 1 talents that a lot of different heroes have. Conjurer's Pursuit says that whenever you grab 3 regeneration globes, you gain a stack that grants you plus 0.25 mana per second. So if you are a hero that wants to stay in lane and do damage early on and make sure that you don't run out of mana so you can kind of continue to bully your opponent, people that come to mind immediately are Uther, Lily. These are the ones that you want to be chock full of mana and running around the, not running around the map, staying in line, grabbing regeneration globes, and building that up over the course of the game. Lily is especially good at this because she just has so much ability to sustain at the beginning of the game. You don't actually want her to be part of a big roaming comp. Now, certain pro teams will go through and they'll have comps that are dedicated towards people staying in lane, and then occasionally you'll see, especially if you tend to see like a Stitches and a Kerrigan on the same team, that means they want to do a roving comp. They want to get out on the map and just gank lanes constantly. They're not trying to stand in lane, gain experience, grab regeneration gloves. No. They're just running around the map trying to kill people. That's all they care about. So Lily doesn't fit into that because she doesn't have a lot of CC or stun ability. So for her, it's a very logical choice to take Conjurer's Pursuit at level 1 to build up mana because you know she's going to be in lane anyway. You want her to have the extra mana regen so she can bully people at the beginning of the game, and that way she can have massive mana regen at the end to throw out her support abilities, which she needs. Another good example of this is the Regeneration Master talent, right? So another one that allows people, when they get stacks of regeneration, or stacks of globes, it'll build their health regeneration over the course of the game. That is incredibly useful for a lot of people. If you're going to be the sole tank on your team that stands in on fights and make sure that you're absorbing the damage for the whole rest of the team. Whereas if you're on a team with multiple warriors, maybe you don't need Regeneration Master, and you can take something that's a little bit more geared towards buffing one of your individual abilities. So again, it's a very, it's you have to understand the team comp that you're on and what you're playing against, but all of those general level 1 abilities, Conjurer's Pursuit, things like that, are great safe picks for anyone to take because it allows you to scale a bit better into the late game.
Gotcha.
Okay. And So I had asked you before, but what about bribe? That's one that I
I
had
was
had a
gonna ask
question
about that
about.
too, yeah.
Yeah. Where do you see it as a good pick? What types of heroes and sort of like the team comps that would take it?
So the best place to take bribe is on a super mobile champion. The reason being that you want them to be able to get across the map, maybe even steal an enemy's merc camp, and then get right back to the other side. So heroes like Brightwing, Falstad, Abathur, these are all heroes that tend to take bribe at level 1. They all have mass mobility with their, whether you're Brightwing and you're teleporting to your teammate, healing them up, Falstad flying across the map, Abathur using his burrow. They're all heroes that can get in, use the bribe, get back out. And that's what you want them to do. So someone like Falstad, for example, all of those picks you may have said, well, Brightwing's a support, give her bribe, let her grab some merc camps. I get that. Abathur, sure, he's just going to symbiote people all game. I love it. But then they look at Falstad and they're like, wait, this guy's supposed to be a damage dealer. He's an assassin. Why are you taking bribe on this guy? Well, Falstad is a very different kind of assassin. Falstad is an assassin right now that a lot of people are playing a very burst build off of. They're building him like a mage right now, so he can just do max damage in a fight and get the hell out of there. So none of the rest of his level 1 talents really build towards that bursty build all that well. They're good at giving him some sustained damage, maybe even some protection in fights. But because he has mobility, bribe is awesome, because he runs in, sneaks a merc camp, and then uses his Z to fly to someone, and then is in the fight with his big burst abilities.
I see.
Nice. Would you say that generally you would try to have somebody on your team that has bribe always, or is it more of a circumstantial thing?
I think it's a circumstantial thing.
Okay.
I think it's a thing where if your team's like, you know what, Brightwing and Blink Heal is going to be great on our team comp, then great. Go ahead, thumbs up, you get bribe. Well done. But I don't think you can specifically go for that. I don't even think you need to specifically, and I'm not a pro player, so I'm sure someone will probably yell at me and disagree with me wholeheartedly, but I don't think you specifically need to build into your team comp super strong mark control right now.
Okay.
The teams get strong enough as you get into the late game that if you have good coordination, you should still be able to run merc objectives without having to have bribe.
Okay.
Okay.
So are there any, before we move on, are there any other abilities like those that are, you know, across lots of heroes, pretty basic, things that you would want to know early on, whether to decide whether to take them, that you think we should cover before we move on to more like talking about the pro scene and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one that I really like, and that's Blood for Blood, actually. It's a level 16 talent, and I've noticed that in pub games, a lot of people don't like taking it. And I think that's a mistake. We've been seeing it a lot at the pro scene lately. Blood for Blood is an activatable, so it gives you another ability, which does make the character more complicated to play, which I can understand. That's why some people would shy away from it. But it not only applies a slow to whoever you hit it with, but it also leeches a good percentage of their life from them to you. So if you're an assassin or a character that wants to be in the middle of the action, a character like Tyrael comes to mind with this, who is a warrior but yet wants to be in there and just running around and throwing his hammer everywhere or throwing his sword everywhere. Like, you want Blood for Blood because you can slow enemies, you can catch up to them, and then you can continue to do damage to them and chase them down. Blood for Blood's great in that circumstance.
It does a lot of things.
It really does. And as an assassin, it does all the things you want. It takes life from them, it gives that life to you, and it slows them so you can escape easier because you're usually the squishier one to begin with. So Blood for Blood is just overall, it synergizes well with almost any series of talents you would go for on any hero that carries it. So if you need extra damage, if you need extra escape ability, highly recommended at level 16.
Cool.
And we had a question in chat as well about Envenom. Can you just tell us a little bit about that one as well?
Right, so Envenom is an ability, it's an activatable again, so you'll actually do poison damage, it'll do a certain amount of damage and then start doing damage over time. Envenom is especially interesting because you tend to pick it on heroes you wouldn't expect. Arthas, for example, is built 100% of the time right now with Envenom. He starts at the beginning of games with his increased E range so he can do more AoE damage, and then you usually go into Envenom, because think about Arthas's kit and think about what his level 4 talents are going to get you. So at level 4, I'm just going to get the exact names here because I will forget these. We have superiority, which is reduced damage from non-heroic enemies by 50%. We have eternal hunger, which is mana returned by your passive, Frostmourne Hungers, is increased to 60. You have destruction, which boosts the damage of Frostmourne Hungers, or you have envenom. So if we want to analyze those one by one, take superiority, reduce damage from non-heroic enemies by 50%. Arthas doesn't care about that at all. Like, in any way, shape, or form. Arthas is built to jump into the middle of a fight, look at the rest of the enemy team and say, you can't deal with this. And that's what he does really well. So if you walk in and you're like, superiority, all your non-heroes won't damage me as, wait, hold on, this is doing nothing to mitigate hero damage. So you kind of lose a lot of the synergy with Arthas there. If you move on to the next one, Eternal Hunger, that's not bad because it gives a decent amount of mana refund with Frostmourne Hungers, which is your D ability with Arthas. So you can sustain yourself in lane. So that's not bad. I won't say too much about that right now. Destruction does additional damage with Frostmourne Hungers, right? Which again, well, that doesn't sound bad. Maybe my team needs a little bit of additional damage. But Envenom does extra damage too, and it's way better at dealing damage than Destruction is. So we've already said, well, we don't want superiority. If we're going to pick a damage one, we might as well pick Envenom over Destruction. So really your choice is Eternal Hunger. Do I want 30 more mana, or do I want to do 210 damage, plus 35 per level over 6 seconds? And the choice becomes pretty obvious when you look at it in that context, especially given the fact of knowing what Arthas wants to do. He wants to get into the middle of waves, he wants to bully people out, and then he wants to sit in the middle of fights and continue to do damage. And all he has to do is set that Activatable, run in, set that Activatable on an assassin, and that assassin is taking guaranteed several hundred points of damage over the course of the fight with that alone. So a very useful ability on Arthas.
I think I've seen Bright Wings with it too, which seems strange to me. Do you mind kind of explaining the logic behind that?
A very similar concept when it comes to talents as well, so that, again, I will inevitably... There's so many talents in this game! I'm trying my best to cast it, and I know most of the major ones, but it's all those side talents. I have no idea what they are.
I was gonna say, because one of the things that you guys can't see this as I'm the one controlling the stream, but I was scrolling through and looking at these talents as you were mentioning them, and I have to do, like, how many... like 12 scroll wheels to go through all of these talents. So there are so many to memorize. So I guess I would encourage you at home not to feel like if I don't know those talents, I'm behind, because I don't think right now that I know anybody who knows the name for all of the talents. And I personally assign my own names to them all the time, which is something I'm battling. So I am actually super impressed by Kevin being able to just pull these names out of his head. So he gets a special gold star and A+ on studying the storm tonight.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Now, I like I said, you learn the one just through sheer repetition of casting. You'll learn the ones that are most commonly used. But my God, there are so many in this game. You can't learn them all.
Well, that's like learning all the items, right?
Right. But I mean, like, even then, like, items, at least in other MOBAs, are neutral to all the rest of your characters, right? So, like, everyone, even you might have 100 items, but that's it. You're not going to add more. Every hero that comes out, they're like, whoa, here's another 15 talents. Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
This is totally tangential, but I've been wanting to say this since the beginning, so excuse me the bunny trail. But I love the talent system, because you were talking about how it's different than items and you can kind of choose them wherever you are on the map. You don't have to go back to base to like purchase them or anything. And just as somebody who like finds a lot of meaning in video games, which is not necessarily a popular or common sense thing to do, but I love that it's about evolving your character's like inner persona and skills as opposed to like the materialism of buying an item and carrying it around with you. Like it makes me feel much more like I could be a superhero than I have to purchase in order to be, you know, powerful. So anyway, end of random bunny trail.
I'm actually... Oh, go ahead, please.
You're more like a Superman instead of a Batman, is what you're saying.
Yes, I am definitely more a Superman than a Batman kind of person.
I actually totally agree with you, though. And to me, the coolest part is that it lets you do a lot of individualized things for that hero that you couldn't do with an item shop, right? So, like, in an item shop, in a typical Blizzard item shop, you're going to have Doomhammer. You'll probably have Frostmourne in there. But then Diablo has to go buy Frostmourne, and it's really weird when Diablo buys Frostmourne because that's not wow and so now you can do like Vala I'm sorry, go back to Vala. I play a lot of Vala. So you have Vault, right? Well, I'm playing also a Demon Hunter in Diablo right now. You have Tumble as one of the abilities. abilities that you can get to augment Vault, which allows you to vault a second time for less mana. So they threw Tumble into the game, and it feels really cool to me. Like, I'm actually picking my rune for my ability that I play in Diablo 3, and you can't do that if you have an item shop. So just purely from the immersion factor, I totally agree with you. I love it.
I hadn't even thought of that, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, way cool on the lore factor, Blizzard.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
That, you know, they got some guys that are pretty good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Brightwing, I think is what we were saying.
Yes.
Yes.
Before I derailed us, we were on Brightwing.
So Brightwing is a lot of a similar circumstance as well. Like Brightwing, you want to be able to jump in and overwhelm a lane. The reason that Brightwing shows up to your lane is because either you have a critical numbers advantage and you're going to push down the lane, you're going to try and get kills, or it's the exact opposite and you're about to die and you need Brightwing to show up and save your life. In any case, Envenom's pretty good for you there. It's a little less clear-cut than Arthas, to me at least. So the talents you get at level 4 are Anti-Magic Powder, which blocks 1 instance of spell damage by 50%. You don't really need to make Brightwing tankier at any given point in time. Brightwing's there to show up, blink heal, and be like, "Hi, I hope I don't die while I'm turning people into sheep."
Okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Brightwing does. You don't need a Brightwing tankier. You want Brightwing to be as useful as is humanly possible. She flies away. You don't make her tankier. Then you have Protective Shield. Now, this one is actually not bad, because Protective Shield is an activatable to just shield an allied hero for a bunch of health. That's not a bad call, and I would actually say that that's probably okay as a counter pick to Envenom if you just don't feel like you need the extra damage at all. Then you have Promote, which of course makes mercs that you take stronger, or lane minions, or I'm sorry, it's lane minions. I apologize. You make those stronger. Brightwing's not really a split pusher. She can do that because you have the Z ability and you can teleport to anyone, so you could just go up to a lane, push it out for a while, and then come back. But frankly, it doesn't build the core thing that makes Brightwing awesome, which is showing up to a lane and then immediately helping one of your allies. So your choices now are Protective Shield or Envenom. Now, usually as Brightwing, like I said, you want to get there just when you can overwhelm a lane, and usually Envenom's your better choice. You're going to zap to a lane, you're going to polymorph them, you're going to Envenom them because they're not going to be able to use any abilities to get away, and then you've done a significant amount of damage basically for free. So Envenom is a really, really natural choice for Brightwing as well.
That's way cool.
That's
that I did not realize.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think, because I played a lot of Brightwing, and I'm trying to think what I even got, but I think I would get Protective Shield and then forget to even cast it, so it was a total waste. But
yeah, I mean, you still have to cast Envenom though.
Yeah,
so it's
I know.
Remembering it.
I know. That's one of my big failings, is that I need to learn to cast my extra abilities.
And, well, it's actually kind of interesting because I used to go down the Protective Shield route on Brightwing a lot, and then when I saw more pro players using Envenom, I was like, well, I mean, I'll give them, sure. All right, let's give this a shot. We'll see if it's. I mean, these pro players probably know what they're talking about. And then I'd show up to a lane with Envenom and people melt, and I'm like, whoa, okay, I get why they're doing this now. Brightwing's pretty awesome. So.
Yeah. I think Envenom's one of the takeaways for me. I think I'm going to be using that one a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Better than you think it is.
You know, I've had people tell me that I should use it, but I've never looked at it that in depth and compared it to all the other talents and why it's so much better and thought about the synergy, like you said. So that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, that's what you have to consider when you're going through and looking at the builds. It's very much not in a vacuum. What do I think makes Brightwing cool? But very real-world examples of how do I use Brightwing in a team fight? How do I use Brightwing when I'm out of a team fight? What ability specifically synergizes with the objective that I am trying to accomplish with Brightwing? When I play Brightwing, I want to be all over the map, and I want to be constantly in people's faces. So Envenom makes sense for me because I'm dashing from lane to lane. I'm envenoming them, and then when I'm bored, I run into the jungle and bribe their mercs and run out. Like, that's the way I play Brightwing, and that's how I synergize my build. And that's the kind of stuff people need to think about when they're designing a build for their hero. It's not even so much what do pro players do or anything. Think about how you want to play a hero and what talents synergize best together to accomplish that objective.
Okay.